Okay, welcome everyone to today's summit, Elevated Study Abroad and Traveling Abroad. We're all studying, of course, when we're traveling. And this expert that I have today is someone who is so dynamic, and I'm very excited for you to hear her story. Katrina McGree. Let's start again. I just
No,
because I screwed up on that first thing.
okay. It's okay.
Okay, I'm gonna say your name first, and then I'll give
Yeah,
the
just get through the hard part. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, here we go. Take two. Okay. Okay. Welcome everyone to today's summit for Elevated Study Abroad. I'm very excited to have an expert and an outstanding person in general with us today. Katrina McGee is with us, and she is a career break and sabbatical consultant. And she has an incredible resume. She has a very interesting professional background, and the evolution of her story to the point where she is today is very compelling. So that much said, let me introduce her again. Welcome, Katrina. Thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be here.
Good. Okay. Well, let's just dig right in if that's okay with you. What I would like to do, I'd like you to share, if you would please, your story to your viewers, because it really is interesting, because you started off on the traditional course and you're not there now.
That is an accurate summary. Yeah. So I actually got my start in a very sort of corporate job. I was a math major in college and went on to become a healthcare actuary. And after doing that for 8 years, I knew pretty early on that that wasn't going to be my final stop. It wasn't necessarily, lighting me up, let's say, in all the creative and really fun and more extroverted parts of myself. So I went to business school and got my MBA, and I thought I would go do this whole second career and suddenly everything would make sense, except that I moved to Minnesota after getting my degree, started a second career in market research, and quickly realized that it was the corporate culture that was not working for me. It wasn't really just the job specifically. And I really had to dig deep to find some answers about what is it that I want to do next? Why is this not working? What do I have to let go of? What am I trying to move towards? And, another fun fact about me is that I was like a wanderluster as a kid, but my parents grew up with very little money. And at the time, I didn't fly on an airplane until I was 17. I didn't see the ocean for the first time until I was 17. So travel wasn't something I grew up knowing how to do, especially international travel specifically. And so I did not travel abroad for the first time until I was almost 30 years old in business school, purposely choosing a school that had some international opportunities. So when I decided after, 8 months in this career that wasn't suiting me either, to hire a life coach, in my work with her a few months in, I had this epiphany sitting on her couch that I didn't want to find a third career or a better job. I just wanted to take a year off and travel the world. So I just want to give the context that that felt impossible for many reasons. One, because I was not a solo traveler at this time. I had done a little bit of travel, but not a lot. It wasn't something I felt very comfortable with. And I also had $1,500 in my bank account. So it wasn't like I had access to this money to afford it. In fact, I had, 50 something thousand dollars worth of debt and student loans. So it was a really big deal, but I did it. I took the leap. I saved 40K in 18 months, and then I quit my job and I traveled around the world until I went broke, which was about 20 months. And it was epic and life changing. But I came back without feeling really clear on what I wanted to do next at that time. And I still had that debt. So I went back to corporate, paid off all my debt in less than 2 years, became debt free. And then I began constructing this new way of being in the world where I could access more freedom, more flexibility. And that sort of led to the path of me becoming a digital nomad.
Wow, that's incredible. So let's talk about some of the lessons that you learned. Okay, you had this latent travel bug within you from the time that you were a child, and you made it happen. And what I think is really interesting, each step of the way, you have taken action. This isn't something you've just thought about. You have acted. You've figured it out. You've done whatever you've needed to do to put the pieces of the puzzle together to make this happen. Even paying off your student loan and so forth. But let's talk about that 20-month break that we can, if we
Yeah.
can, for a few minutes. Talk about some of the lessons that you learned there and how that helped in terms of your recognition of how travel brings freedom and clarity of mind and shaped your whole trajectory.
Yeah, I think one of the lessons was a very important and broadly applicable lesson, which is that the world is generally a kind place. I think growing up, being a solo female traveler, not having traveled a lot, the world was ready. Like my environment, my world was ready to tell me all the ways that I could get murdered, killed, assaulted, like all the things, right? And not to say that those things don't happen, but it felt like me saying I want to travel the world by myself and take on this big challenge. It's like be so afraid, right? Carry a whistle, have a door jam, do all these things like, don't go out at dark. Like just really live a small life when you're traveling because the world is a very scary place. I definitely took precautions while I traveled. I tried to be smart. I educated myself on the places I was going, but everywhere I went, I was so astounded by just the level of care, of interest, of consideration, and kindness that I experienced with the people in all the countries I had visited. And what I walked away with at the end of that experience was realizing I didn't need to be as afraid of the world, as afraid of myself, or as afraid of other people as I had maybe been told before or thought that I needed to be. And I think that just made the world feel a lot bigger and a lot more expansive and safer to be a part of, right? And to have that desire. I think one of the other big lessons I learned was that if you can dream it, you can do it. I had no reason to believe I could actually do this trip. And when I originally planned it, I thought my $40,000 would last me 12 months. So that was my plan. I'm going to do this wild and crazy thing for 1 year. And that's so epic and it's so crazy. And
Uh-huh.
then as I got into it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I'm really doing great with managing my money. So let me just keep going until I run out. And that ended up being 20 months. And, I would say the third lesson that I learned that was super powerful, which is exactly why I do the job that I do today. When I came back from my break, I updated my resume once I knew my break was going to end. And I remember thinking, I have no idea how this is going to go, if anyone's going to want to hire me. I was 3 years into a new career. I had almost been out of that career for 2 years. I got 5 job offers in 5 weeks after returning from
Wow.
my break. Yeah. And, it was in that moment I was like, there is something to this intentional time off, this like living your heart's desires. For me, that looked like travel. And I realized I could help other people do the same thing using all of the things I've learned along the way, which is how I ended up becoming a career break and sabbatical coach and consultant for others.
Okay, I think that's incredible, and I love the intentionality behind it that you just mentioned, because as you live with intention and make things happen, I mean, this isn't something I intend for this to happen and expect it to. It's of course paired with the connection and purpose, but if you act with intent, the purpose can unravel in the process is what I have found. Uh, so what you talk about the world being expansive, safer, and a kind place, and that is my experience exactly. And that is one of the things behind my business, Cross Culture Connections. It is a safe place. Unity and human connection make life worthwhile, and there are so many different ways to do it, and you need to travel to see those various ways of doing that. So that is terrific in terms of lining up with my personal philosophy and passion. Obviously, consideration and kindness, going through the world with that. And as a former corporate person, that can be a complete it's very divergent from the corporate culture of many places, which can be, as I know, cutthroat. So
Yeah.
learning to change your way of thinking from this very structured pattern, purposeful existence, and I'm certainly not slamming that way of life, but clearly it was not something that worked for you. But you took some of the same disciplines to this new life that you're leading in terms of being very careful in terms of planning and looking at okay, this is it's going to cost money and so forth. But you managed things so that it worked in a way that I think is very impressive. So let's talk about how you took this, what you went, how many months longer? 8 months longer than you had originally
Yeah.
for. So let's talk about what are some of the ways that you made this budget thing work?
Yeah, there's like the sexy way I made it work, and then there's the not sexy way. So the sexy way is points and miles, right? That's the quick hit sort of living an experience that maybe you can't afford or that you would have to save longer for. I was able to use points to fly to round trip to Southeast Asia and back. that was a huge expense that I didn't, have to fork over the money for. That really helped it last a lot longer. There were a few hotel stays that I was able to do through points and miles as well. But once I knew I was taking this break, I got really serious about researching travel related credit cards and understanding points and miles better so that I could be thoughtful leading up to that 18, to 24 months leading up to it, that when I'm making these expenses, I'm making those charges really impact the bottom line for me, and that helped extend my timeline. The
Good.
unsexy way is I budgeted, right? And it isn't about deprivation, but I was so aware of how much money I was spending, where I was spending this money, how I was spending it, and it helped me make aligned trade-offs. So it's not that I'm not doing something, but it's the fact that like if I could stay in nicer accommodations or do this elephant sanctuary tour that's like $80 plus, a shuttle an hour outside of Chiang Mai, I'm able to decide that from a place of alignment. I'm able to decide it from this higher version of myself that's like, just have a great experience. What would be the most fulfilling or the most rewarding to you? And so I was always, tracking what I was spending so that I was able to understand what was happening with my budget and making these aligned trade offs when necessary. And also, sometimes when I was spending way less than I thought, it gave me permission to do more than I had maybe thought or budgeted in a certain location. So, those were the two biggest aspects of making that money last and really being thoughtful about, how I was going to choose to show up for that experience.
Good. And that ties into your whole concept of purpose and intention, living with purpose and intention. And it's not, I love how you said it's not deprivation. It's a sense of freedom because you have choices now. It opens up more choice.
Yeah.
Am I going to go to the elephant sanctuary? Big deal. I'm not going to have a spot available, which I probably wouldn't use anyway at this 5-star hotel or whatever. It's making choices, it's taking control. And by having that control, you're allowed a certain freedom that you define. And I think it's this self-definition is a critical part of what you look at. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's purpose, it's intention. I find that my personal freedom, I always have access to it, but to really tap into that level of power within myself, I have to just really see the playing field so that I'm making thoughtful, intentional choices with the power I do have.
Okay, and that's what makes this an elevated or epic experience or epic. And it is life-changing. It's transformative on a personal level. It brings a lot of fulfillment you had not received otherwise, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. But okay, so these are the practical and some of the very positive things. What about some of the downsides like loneliness and when you're thinking of, okay, you will have times of boredom, you'll have periods of thinking, what in the heck am I doing here? How do you deal with
Yeah.
those things?
Yeah. I think as a life coach, so I'm a certified life coach, I know that so much of this sort of drama that we create for ourselves is the perspective that we're choosing to have or how we approach it and with what mindset. So, with boredom, right? There's this idea that I realized through my 20 months. Variation creates appreciation. So, first of all, boredom is not bad. Even a sense of staleness does not have to inherently be bad. Being bored is not, the end of the world. And a lot of times it's just an invitation to either be still, to rest, or to just explore our mind, right? But when traveling, it's easy to once you really get going, it's easy for things to start to feel stale or to feel less wowed, right, by the things you're experiencing. If you've been to 100 churches, they can all be amazing, but after like the 50th church, you're like, okay, I've seen this before. I know how this goes. And
Yeah.
so one rule of thumb that really worked for me was variation creates appreciation. So I had to keep switching it up and I had to look for what was good in the right now, meaning with my accommodations. Sometimes I was staying in a hostel. Like Southeast Asia had the most fantastic bougie, luxury hostels for very affordable. And so I would sometimes stay in a hostel and I would appreciate what was good about that. The connection with other people, the great, very easy location, the fact that I could walk downstairs and find a tour and go out, meet people for dinner, do a thing, like have people to ask questions to, right? There were benefits to it, but there are also drawbacks. And so then when it was time to go to a homestay or stay at a hotel, I could appreciate that. I could appreciate the silence. I could appreciate the solitude. So it was that variation and being willing to switch things up, get outside my comfort zone, but also allow things to be fresh that really helped me have a lot of appreciation and enjoyment. And then in regards to loneliness, right? The first question is, do I understand the difference between being lonely and being alone? You can be alone, right? Without feeling lonely. Loneliness is a feeling. And I know for a fact that we can feel lonely in a group. We can feel lonely in a marriage. You can feel lonely anywhere. It's part of the human condition to be seeking this connection, right? Like you talked about your business being based, around this idea of connection. And that's what we as humans are seeking. And so I think it's an invitation when you feel lonely to decide and to sort of, discern, is this just me having a weird moment of being alone and I need to like embrace that and take care of myself or nourish myself or find some pleasure and some joy? Or is it this desire to have connection, to build connection, in which case, go to a hostel, like be around people, take a tour, right? If you don't want to do that, take a tour. Free walking tours are an amazing way to meet people that speak your language, that are also sort of transient, tourists, whatever, and you get to learn the lay of the land. And a lot of times I've ended up going out to like dinner or hanging out with people that I've met on a tour that you just strike a conversation up, right? So just understanding, am I desiring connection? If so, let me go out where the people are and open myself up to that, or is it just a reframe of I'm just alone right now? And that actually doesn't have to be bad.
Okay. Okay. Excellent points. Excellent. I love all of them. And I have also found, in addition to that, there are many volunteer experiences for travelers.
Yeah.
I've dealt with some of the issues of loneliness in that respect, and it immediately solves that because you're serving others. And so there are so many ways of getting in. It's still a process of self-reflection and self-reflexivity, but then you go beyond whatever is happening in your head, right?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Yeah, exactly. You go beyond yourself, right? Like you look outside, yeah, and stop getting caught up in your own mind drama about it.
Okay, okay, good. So now let's talk a bit about your business itself. Explain, if you would, to our viewers what your business does, how they reach you, and other things that you'd love to add about this incredible venture that you operate.
Yeah. So I have been doing my business now for 6 years and it has been incredible. Again, I based off of my experience, both getting certified as a life coach and understanding more about the mindset behind it all, but using my amazing planning skills as a former actuary and Excel nerd and just how my brain loves to organize information and then my own lived experience, it kind of all rolls up into being this advocate and this resource for people that want to create time off, take a break from their work, whether that's a sabbatical or a full on career break, and helping them make the most of that experience, making the most of it so that they're taking inspired travel, not aspirational travel. Like they're really tuning into what is true for them, what do they need, helping them get clear on their purpose and what those pillars of that experience are, so that at the end of it, it's life changing and exactly what they needed, and there's no regret. And we just have this amazing time together, sort of walking through building a blueprint for their break. And then, for some of my clients, I'm helping them process the feelings and the experiences they're having while they're on a break. And then talking about reentry, like how do other people create the same success that I had, right? Coming back from this experience. And so I do, D, all of the above, but it's really supporting humans that are courageous enough to speak up and say, this is what I want to do. This is the experience I want to have, and helping to support them in creating that experience in a way that is so fulfilling and so rewarding and surprisingly delightful. So they can avoid a lot of the drama and the pain. And then the secret that some people don't know, but it's definitely the secret for everybody that I work with, is it's a personal development journey, right? This break is a catalyst for a new life, a new way of living, a next chapter. And so, working through the purpose and the themes of your break, are these pillars, and then designing it and showing up courageously and managing your fear, you become a different person, right? Travel can be a huge catalyst and accelerator for that personal growth. But through that experience, you become a different person who then creates a different after. So the before you and the after you are different people that wouldn't even necessarily look alike, right? It's just,
Yeah.
you just become a different version. And so I help people create those kinds of experiences in the work that I do.
Okay, it's amazing and so transformational in such a good way. This has been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much, Katrina, for joining us. And I wish you well on our luck. And I'm so glad to know you now. And I hope that we cross paths again, and that we can continue to communicate. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. It's been such a joy to hang out with you.
Thank you. Have a great day, and watch for Katrina. She's changing things in big ways. Okay, thanks a lot. Bye-bye.